Let me ask you something honest. And I want you to actually think about this, not just read past it. What was the first thing you did this morning? Before your feet hit the floor, before the coffee, before any of it? Was it your phone? Was it the news? Someone else's highlight reel on Instagram? A notification that pulled your attention somewhere outside yourself before you even had a chance to figure out where inside yourself you were? Most people, and I mean most, not some, not a few, most people hand their morning over before they even realize they had something to hand over. They wake up and immediately let the world start writing on them. And then they spend the rest of the day wondering why they feel scattered, why the anxiety is already running by 9 a.m., why they feel reactive instead of grounded, why the day seems to be happening to them instead of for them. Here is what the Stoics understood that most modern people have completely lost. The morning is not just the start of the day. It is the foundation the entire day gets built on. Whatever you pour into that first hour, that is the concrete. Everything else, every decision, every reaction, every conversation, every moment of pressure that arrives later gets built on top of what you laid down before 8 a.m. And if what you laid down was chaos, distraction, anxiety, and someone else's agenda for your attention, then you are building a 12-hour structure on a cracked foundation. And you feel it every single day. You just haven't named it yet. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, a man who had every reason to wake up arrogant and distracted. This man woke up every morning and deliberately built his mind before he let the world touch it. He wrote about it. He practiced it, not occasionally, every single day, because he understood something that most people spend their entire lives missing. The outer world does not care about your inner stability. It is not going to wait for you to feel ready. It is not going to arrive gently. It is going to arrive exactly as hard as it arrives. And you are either prepared for it or you are not. And preparation does not happen when the difficulty shows up. Preparation happens before 8 a.m. What you are about to hear are 10 Stoic morning habits, not motivational suggestions, not feel-good rituals, not the kind of thing you read, nod at, and forget by lunch. These are disciplines, the kind the Stoics actually practiced, the kind that build something real in you, not a mood, not a feeling, not a temporary surge of inspiration, something structural, something that holds when the day gets hard, and the day will get hard. Before we get into habit 1, I need to tell you something about mornings that nobody says out loud. The version of you that exists before you have been influenced by anything external. That is the most honest version of you that today will produce. That version, in the first few minutes of consciousness, is raw, undefended, open. The ancient Stoics did not see that rawness as vulnerability. They saw it as the most important opportunity of the entire day, because an open mind can be shaped, and the only question that matters is, who is doing the shaping? If you pick up your phone, the algorithm shapes it, designed by engineers whose entire job is to make you anxious enough to keep scrolling. If you turn on the news, the media shapes it, built on a business model that requires your fear more than your clarity. If you lie there half asleep, letting random thoughts run, yesterday's unresolved tension shapes it. Or you shape it yourself. That is what these 10 habits are. They are the tools to shape your own mind, deliberately, consistently, before anything else gets the chance. Habit 1. Claim the first 5 minutes like your day depends on it, because it does. Before the phone, before the news, before you speak a word to anyone. 5 minutes, eyes open, feet on the floor, and one deliberate thought, chosen by you, not fed to you. The Stoics called this the morning preparation. Marcus Aurelius did not roll over and check what Rome needed from him before he had first checked what he needed from himself. He sat with his own mind first. He gave himself those first moments as the commander of his own attention. not as a consumer of whatever the world was serving that morning. Here is what you do in those 5 minutes. You ask yourself 3 questions, slowly, not rushing to the answers. What is within my control today? What is not, and can I release it before I try to carry it? What is the one thing, if I do nothing else today, that would make this day mean something? That is it. 3 questions, 5 minutes. Simple enough that there is no excuse to skip it. Powerful enough that the days you do it feel different from the days you don't, in a way that is not subtle, not theoretical, not something you have to convince yourself you feel. You will feel it. But here is the part that matters more than the questions themselves. The act of taking those 5 minutes before anything external has touched you is itself the habit. It is the declaration that your mind belongs to you first, that the first input of the day comes from inside your own values, your own intentions, your own chosen direction, not from a notification, not from a headline, not from someone else's urgency landing in your inbox. That declaration, made every morning, builds something over time, not discipline in the abstract, ownership, real, felt, lived ownership of your own mental starting point. And here is what most people discover about 3 weeks into this single habit, before they have even added the other 9. The anxiety that used to be running before they were even fully awake, it quiets. Not because their circumstances improved, because they stopped beginning the day already reacting to the world before they had even fully arrived in themselves. The 5 minutes is not a morning hack. It is a statement about who is in charge of your mind. Make it every morning, before anything else. What comes next, habit 2, is where it gets deeper. And for a lot of people, it is going to be uncomfortable to hear, because it involves something you have been avoiding, and you probably already know what it is. There is something the comfortable life does not tell you. It is quiet about it, deliberately quiet, because if it told you, you would stop choosing it so automatically. Here is what it does not tell you. Every morning you wake up and choose the path of least resistance before the day has even started. You are not resting, you are shrinking. Slowly, invisibly, in ways that do not show up immediately, but that compound across weeks and months into a version of yourself that is measurably less capable than the one who existed a year ago. You do not feel it happening. That is the trap. The comfortable morning feels neutral. It feels like recovery. It feels like you are just giving yourself grace, just taking it easy, just being human. But comfort is not neutral. It never was. It is a direction, and the direction it moves you, every single time you choose it when the harder thing was available, is toward a smaller, more fragile, more easily rattled version of yourself. The Stoics knew this, not as a theory, as a lived daily reality. Seneca wrote letters to a young man named Lucilius, letters that read like they were written yesterday, not 2,000 years ago. And in one of those letters, he said something that most people read and then immediately find a reason to dismiss, because accepting it costs something. He said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Read that slowly. More in imagination than in reality. The cold you are dreading, it is never as bad as the dread of it. The hard conversation you have been putting off, the actual conversation, is never as exhausting as the weight of carrying it unopened. The morning discipline that feels impossible from inside the warm blanket, 3 minutes after you have started it, it is just a thing you are doing. The suffering lives in the avoidance, not in the thing itself. Habit 2. Do the hard physical thing first, before your brain negotiates. And it will negotiate. Make no mistake about that. The brain is extraordinarily good at generating reasons. It has had your entire lifetime to learn exactly which arguments work on you, exactly which justifications you will accept, exactly how to dress up avoidance so it looks like wisdom. You need more sleep. You worked hard yesterday. Tomorrow you will be more rested. This one morning will not matter. These are not thoughts, they are negotiations. And every time you accept the terms, the negotiator gets stronger and you get weaker. The Stoics practiced what they called voluntary discomfort, deliberately choosing the harder physical option, not because suffering is noble, but because the act of choosing hard over easy repeatedly across ordinary mornings builds a specific kind of mental architecture that cannot be built any other way. Not the idea of discipline, the actual felt reality of it. Here is what that means practically. It means movement, real movement, before 8 a.m. Not a stroll, not a gentle stretch while checking your phone, something that costs you something physically, that your body resists and your mind argues against, and you do anyway. Not because the exercise itself will save your life this morning, because the decision to do it, made in the exact moment when every comfortable alternative was available, that decision is a deposit into an account that pays interest in every hard moment the rest of your day delivers. The person who has already done the hard thing by 7 a.m. walks into every subsequent challenge with evidence, not belief, evidence. I already chose hard once today. I can choose it again. That evidence is different from motivation. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes and cannot be scheduled. Evidence is a record. It sits in you, and it does not fluctuate based on how you feel in the next difficult moment. Habit 3. Eat like you plan to think clearly until noon. This one will be resisted. I know that. Because food in the morning has become one of those deeply personal territories where everyone has an opinion and a study and a podcast that confirms exactly what they already wanted to do. So I am not going to tell you what to eat. I am going to tell you what the Stoics understood about the relationship between physical inputs and mental clarity, and let you apply it yourself. Epictetus, a man who had been a slave, who owned almost nothing, who lived with physical disability for much of his life, Epictetus talked about the body as the instrument through which the mind operates. Not the mind's prison, the mind's instrument. And no craftsman picks up a damaged instrument and expects full performance from it. What you consume in the first 2 hours of the morning is not just fuel. It is a decision about what quality of instrument you are handing your mind today. The brain that is running on processed sugar and artificial stimulants by 7:30 a.m. is not the same instrument as the brain that has been given what it actually needs to sustain deep focus, emotional regulation, and clear decision-making through the hours that matter. This is not about being perfect. It is not about eliminating everything enjoyable. It is about the same principle behind every other habit in this video. Intentionality over automaticity. Not eating whatever is fastest because your morning was chaotic and breakfast became whatever you grabbed. Choosing what goes into the instrument deliberately because what goes in determines what comes out. One question before you eat anything tomorrow morning. Does this serve the version of me that I am trying to be today? Not forever. Not in some abstract health goal years from now. Today, the next 4 hours, the meeting, the conversation, the work, the pressure that is coming. Does what I am about to consume make me more or less equipped for that? Answer honestly, then choose. Habit 4. Read 1 page of something that challenges how you think. 1 page, not a chapter, not a self-improvement podcast playing in the background while you do 3 other things simultaneously. 1 page, seated, present, fully there. The Stoics were readers. More than that, they were rereaders. Marcus Aurelius returned to the same ideas repeatedly, not because he had not understood them the first time, but because understanding a Stoic principle intellectually and having it become part of how you actually move through the world are 2 completely different things, separated by enormous distance. That distance is closed by repetition, by returning to the idea on the ordinary morning, not just the morning when you feel philosophical. Here is what 1 page before 8 a.m. does that nothing else in the morning routine does. It puts a thought that is not yours into your mind. before your own habitual thinking patterns have fully solidified for the day. Your mind in the early morning is more permeable than it will be at 2 p.m. when your default patterns are running at full speed. A challenging idea encountered in that permeability has a different quality of access to you. It does not just pass through, it lands. And a landed idea, one that genuinely challenges an assumption you have been carrying, one that reframes something you thought was fixed, that idea changes what questions you carry into the rest of the day. And the questions you carry determine what you notice. And what you notice determines what you think. And what you think, accumulated across ordinary mornings across months, determines who you become. 1 page, every morning. Not when you feel like reading. Every morning. Habit 5. Say what you are grateful for out loud. Actually, out loud. Not in your head, not in a journal yet. That comes later. Out loud, to yourself. In the room you are in, before anyone else is up, or before you leave the house. I know how that sounds. I know the resistance that just came up in you reading that, because it sounds soft. It sounds like the kind of thing that belongs in a different category than the hard disciplines we have been talking about. Here is why it does not. The Stoics practiced a discipline called negative visualization, the deliberate contemplation of what life would be without the things currently in it. Not as a pessimistic exercise, as a precision tool for attention. Because the human mind habituates to whatever is constant. The things that are always there become invisible. The people who are always present stop being felt as gifts and start being taken for granted. The health that is functioning stops being noticed until it stops functioning. Speaking gratitude out loud for specific things, not general things. Not, I am grateful for my life, but I am grateful that my daughter laughed at breakfast yesterday and that I was present enough to actually hear it. That specificity breaks the habituation. It makes the invisible visible again. And a mind that can see what it has, clearly, specifically, without the fog of habituation, is a mind that does not spend all day chasing what it doesn't have. That is not a small thing. In a culture built on manufactured dissatisfaction, on the deliberate engineering of the feeling that you are always one purchase, one achievement, one version away from enough, the ability to genuinely see what is already here is a radical act. Say it out loud tomorrow, 3 things, specific ones, and notice what it does to the quality of the first hour that follows. Because what is coming in part 3, habits 6 through 8, goes into the territory most morning routines never touch. The internal work. The part that is not visible from outside. The part that determines everything about how you show up when the pressure is real and the stakes are high and nobody is watching to see which version of you arrives. That is where it gets serious. You have made it to the part most people skip, not because they do not know it exists, because they sense, somewhere underneath the surface of their daily routine, that engaging with it honestly is going to require something from them that the first 5 habits did not. The first 5 habits are about what you do in the morning. This part is about who you are in the morning, before the doing, before the movement and the reading and the food and the gratitude, before any of it. There is a version of you that shows up every single morning, and most people have never formally introduced themselves to that version. They just let it run. They let it carry its resentments and its unexamined assumptions and its quiet background fears into every hour of the day, completely unchecked, because nobody ever told them that checking it was an option. It is not just an option. For the Stoics, it was the whole point. Everything visible on the outside of a person, their patience, their decisiveness, their ability to stay grounded when everything around them is unstable, every single bit of that is downstream of something invisible happening on the inside. And the morning is the only time of day when that invisible interior is accessible in a way that it simply is not once the day has fully started and the noise has moved in. This is your window, and most people spend it on their phone. Habit 6. Sit in silence for 10 minutes and do not escape it. Not meditation in the performance sense, not an app guiding you through a breathing exercise with soft music underneath it. Silence. Real silence. You and your own mind, with nowhere to go and nothing to do. 10 minutes. And I want to be honest with you about what is going to happen in those 10 minutes. Because if you go in unprepared for it, you will quit inside the first 3 and convince yourself silence is not for you. What is going to happen is this. Everything you have been avoiding thinking about is going to show up. The unresolved thing with someone you care about, the decision you have been orbiting without landing on, the quiet background anxiety about something you cannot fully name, the version of yourself you have been intending to become and have not yet become. All of it. It has been waiting. And the moment the noise stops, it walks in. Most people reach for their phone at exactly this moment, not because they need something specific from it, because the discomfort of sitting with their own unfiltered mind is something they have spent years training themselves to escape the instant it arrives. The Stoics did not escape it. They walked toward it. Marcus Aurelius called this the practice of examining the ruling faculty, the part of you that governs every other part. And he wrote that a person who does not regularly examine it is not governing themselves at all. They are being governed by whatever happens to be loudest inside them on any given day. Most people are being governed by something they have never looked at directly. The 10 minutes of silence is the looking. Not to solve everything, not to arrive at conclusions, just to see what is actually there, without flinching, without immediately reaching for a distraction, without performing the role of someone who has everything handled, just you and what is real. And here is what happens on the other side of staying in it. Past the discomfort, past the first wave of restlessness, past the urge to do literally anything else. Clarity. Not dramatic clarity, quiet clarity. The specific and unmistakable feeling of knowing where you actually are, as opposed to the blurred, half-aware state that most people carry through their entire day because they never stopped long enough to locate themselves inside it. 10 minutes, every morning, no escape. That practice, accumulated over weeks, builds something in you that is very hard to describe until you have it, and then extremely obvious once you do. The ability to be alone with yourself without needing to run from it. That sounds simple. It is not common. And the person who has it carries a quality of steadiness that people around them can feel without being able to name what they are feeling. Habit 7. Write down the worst thing that could happen today. Then make peace with it. This is the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. And it is possibly the most misunderstood practice in all of ancient philosophy. People hear, think about the worst thing that could happen, and they hear an invitation to anxiety, to catastrophizing, to starting the day by drowning in everything that might go wrong. That is the opposite of what this practice does. Here is how it actually works. You take your journal, or a piece of paper, anything, and you write down the most genuinely difficult thing that could realistically happen today. Not the catastrophic fantasy, the real thing, the conversation that could go badly, the outcome that might not come through, the person who might disappoint you, the thing you are working on that might fail. You write it down, specifically, in plain words. And then, and this is where the Stoic practice separates from anxiety, you ask yourself one question. If this happens, can I survive it? Not thrive, not emerge victorious, not feel fine about it. Simply, can I survive it? Can I remain a functioning person with intact values who continues moving forward? Almost always. The answer is yes. And that yes, located before the difficulty arrives rather than during it, removes the thing that makes difficulty genuinely debilitating. Not the difficulty itself, the unexamined terror of it, the shapeless dread that lives in the not looking. when you look at it directly, when you name it specifically, and walk through it honestly before it arrives, it loses the power that came from being undefined. It becomes a thing that could happen that you have already partially processed, and a partially processed difficulty lands completely differently than an ambush. The Stoics were not pessimists. They were realists who refused to be surprised by reality. Write it down tomorrow morning. The real thing, the one you have been not looking at. Make peace with the worst case before the day begins, and then watch how the rest of the day feels, carrying a mind that has already done the hard internal work of accepting the possibility instead of spending 12 hours flinching away from it. Habit 8. Set one standard for yourself today. 1, not 10. Here is where most morning routines fail, and they fail in a very specific way. They are too big. The person who wakes up genuinely motivated, who has read the right book, watched the right video, felt the right surge of intention, that person makes a list. And the list is real, and the intentions behind it are genuine, and every single item on it is something they actually want to do. And by 11 a.m., 3 things on the list are done, and 7 are not. And the day that started with genuine momentum has quietly collapsed into the familiar weight of everything that was planned and did not happen. And the problem is not motivation. The motivation was real. The problem is volume. 10 standards held simultaneously is not 10 times more powerful than 1. It is 10 times more diluted. Because attention, real, focused, quality attention, cannot be split across 10 competing commitments without each one getting a fraction of what it needs to actually be met. The Stoics practiced something closer to depth over breadth. One thing, fully, rather than many things partially. Pick one standard for today. One specific behavioral commitment. Not a goal, not an outcome you cannot fully control, but a standard. Something that lives entirely within your own conduct. Today, I will not react to the first version of anything that irritates me. Today, I will do the work before I check anything. Today, I will be fully present for every conversation instead of half present for all of them. 1. Written down. Carried into the day as the single thread you are holding. And here is what happens when you hold one thread instead of 10. You actually hold it. Not perfectly, but genuinely, with enough attention remaining on it throughout the day that when the moment arrives, the specific moment where the standard was going to be broken, you notice. You have enough awareness left to notice, because your awareness was not spread across 9 other simultaneous commitments. You notice, and sometimes you choose differently than you would have. And that one different choice, made in one real moment, is worth more than 10 standards beautifully written in a journal that were forgotten by 9 a.m. One standard, every morning, carried all the way through. And when the day ends, and this matters, this is the part that closes the loop, you ask yourself whether you held it. Not with drama, not with punishment if you did not, just honestly. Did I hold the standard I set? If yes, the practice continues and builds. If no, you look at exactly where it broke and exactly why. You extract what that specific failure tells you about what needs to be built. And tomorrow morning, you set the standard again, the same one, until it holds. Because the standard that breaks and gets reset, repeatedly, patiently, without the spiral of self-judgment, that is the standard that eventually becomes the character. Not the one set once on a motivated morning and abandoned when the motivation faded. The one returned to every morning, regardless. What comes in part 4 is the piece that ties everything together, and it is the one most people in the self-improvement space never talk about honestly, because it is not glamorous. It does not make good content on its own. But without it, the first 8 habits are a morning routine that makes you feel good. With it, they become armor, real armor, the kind that holds when the day delivers something you were not expecting, the kind that was not built in a single motivated morning, but across every ordinary morning that came before the hard one. Part 4 is about what happens when the routine breaks, when life interrupts, when you miss a morning and then another, and the version of you that started this feels like a stranger. That is not the end of the practice. That is where the practice actually begins. I need to tell you something that most self-improvement content will never say, because saying it does not feel motivational. It does not make for a clean, inspiring message. It does not fit neatly into the kind of content that gets shared because it made someone feel good about themselves for 4 minutes. But it is the most important thing in this entire video. And if you leave without hearing it, the first 8 habits we have covered will help you for maybe 2 weeks. 3 if you are disciplined by nature. And then they will fade, the way every routine fades when the motivated feeling that started it stops showing up every morning to carry it forward. Here is the thing nobody says. You are going to miss a morning. Not maybe. Not if circumstances get difficult. You are going to miss one. And then probably another. And there is going to be a version of you standing in a morning that did not go the way the last several mornings went, looking at the gap between who you were being and who you are being right now, and feeling something very specific. That feeling has a name. Most people call it failure. The Stoics had a different name for it. They called it the return point. The precise moment where the practice either becomes real or reveals itself as something that only existed when conditions were favorable. And a discipline that only exists when conditions are favorable is not a discipline at all. It is a preference. Preferences dissolve under pressure. Disciplines do not. But disciplines have to be built for the hard morning, not just practiced on the easy ones. Habit 9. When the routine breaks, start with one thing, not everything. Here is what happens to most people when they miss a morning. They miss one. Life happened. Genuinely, legitimately. The kind of morning that simply did not cooperate. And they tell themselves they will double up tomorrow. They will do everything tomorrow. They will make up the lost ground and return to the full routine, and it will be fine. Tomorrow arrives, and the momentum is gone. The motivated feeling that made the routine feel natural is not there. And instead of returning to something manageable, instead of coming back through a door that is actually open, they try to walk through the entire wall at once. And they cannot, because nobody can. And the failure to return to everything immediately gets read as evidence that the routine was never really theirs, that the discipline was borrowed from a feeling that has since left, that they are not, at the core of it, the kind of person who sustains this. That story, that single interpretation of a single difficult morning, is what ends more genuine attempts at change than any external circumstance ever could. The Stoics did not catastrophize the fall. They categorized it accurately. A missed morning is a missed morning. It is not a referendum on your identity. It is not evidence about your fundamental nature. It is not a verdict on whether the practice was ever real. It is one morning. And one morning has exactly one antidote. The next morning. Not the perfect return, not the full routine executed flawlessly to prove that yesterday was an anomaly. Just one thing. The single most foundational habit from everything you have built, and for most people, that is habit 1. 5 minutes, 3 questions, before anything else touches you. Just that. One thing done is not the full routine, but one thing done is not nothing either. One thing done is a return. And a return, however small, however incomplete, breaks the story that you are someone who does not come back. Because you did come back. And that fact, small and quiet and completely invisible to everyone around you, is the most important fact of that morning. Seneca wrote that we should count each day as a separate life. The day that broke the routine is one life. It closed. It produced what it produced and cost what it cost. The next morning is a new life, with its own account, its own opening balance, its own complete possibility. Start the new life with one thing, and then, only then, when the one thing is done and the return has been made, Ask yourself whether the next thing is available too. Some mornings the answer will be yes. The one thing will open a door and the full routine will follow, because the momentum of starting carried the rest forward. Some mornings the answer will be no. One thing is genuinely all that morning has, and that is enough. One thing done on the hardest morning is worth more, structurally, in terms of what it builds inside you, than 10 things done on the easiest one. Because the easiest morning does not test anything. The hardest morning tests everything. And the person who returns to even one thing on the hardest morning is building something that the person who only practices on easy mornings will never have. Habit 9 continued. Look at what broke the morning. Not to assign blame, to extract information. This is the piece most people skip because it requires honesty that is uncomfortable. When the routine breaks, and you have made the return, however small, sit for 2 minutes with one specific question. Not, why did I fail? That question leads to a story. And stories, especially self-critical ones, are almost never accurate and almost never useful. The question is, what specifically produced the break? Was it a late night the evening before? Meaning the evening routine is the actual vulnerability, not the morning. Was it an unexpected obligation that removed the time? Meaning the routine needs a shorter emergency version for high-pressure mornings. Was it that the routine felt like a performance rather than a practice? Meaning somewhere along the way it stopped being yours and started being something you were executing to feel like a certain kind of person. Each of these has a different solution, and none of the solutions are available if you skip the honest look and just tell yourself everyone has bad days and move on unchanged. The fall contains information. The information is specific. The specific information, extracted honestly and applied practically, prevents the same fall from the same cause next time. That is not self-criticism. That is engineering. The Stoics were engineers of character. They looked at what broke, not to feel bad about the breaking, but to understand the structure well enough to build it stronger in the exact place it failed. Do that every time. 2 minutes. What specifically broke? What specifically can be adjusted? Then adjust it before tomorrow arrives. Habit 10. End every morning routine with a single commitment spoken out loud. We have covered 9 habits now, and I want you to notice something about all 9 of them. Every single one is internal. Every single one happens inside you, in your thinking, your physical choices, your silence, your writing, your returning. None of them require anyone else's participation. None of them depend on external conditions cooperating. None of them can be taken from you by circumstance or other people or the specific shape of a day that did not go according to plan. That is not accidental. That is the architecture of Stoic practice, built entirely on the territory you actually own, which is smaller than most people want it to be and more powerful than most people ever discover, because they spend their entire lives trying to govern the territory outside it instead. Habit 10 is the closing of the loop, the thing that takes everything internal and makes it directional. Before you leave the space where your morning practice happened, before you walk out of the room and into the day that is waiting, you speak one sentence out loud, a commitment, specific to today, grounded in your values rather than your feelings. Not a motivation, not an affirmation, not something designed to make you feel a certain way. A commitment, the kind that has a behavioral shape, that you will be able to look back at by the end of the day and know clearly whether you honored it or did not. Today I will respond rather than react. Today I will do the hard conversation instead of managing around it again. Today I will be the version of myself that I would be proud of, in the moments when being that version costs something. Spoken out loud, in the room, to yourself. Not because the universe is listening, not because speaking it creates some mystical accountability, because your own ears hear it. And there is something in the hearing of your own commitment, in the physical act of forming the words and releasing them into actual air, that is different from thinking the same thought silently. The thought stays internal, flexible, easy to quietly renegotiate when the moment of pressure arrives. The spoken commitment has already left you. It exists now in the room you were standing in when you said it, and when the moment of pressure arrives, when the choice is available to honor it or quietly let it dissolve, that spoken version of it is still there, not outside of you, inside, as something that was real enough to be said. That reality is harder to walk away from than a thought. And on the days when you walk toward it instead, when the moment arrives and you choose in the direction of the commitment instead of away from it, something very specific accumulates. Evidence. Personal, private, undeniable evidence that you are someone who says a thing and does a thing. That evidence, built one kept commitment at a time, across ordinary mornings, across months, is not confidence in the abstract sense. It is not the feeling of confidence that comes and goes with circumstances. It is the structure of confidence, built from the inside, owned completely, not dependent on external validation or favorable outcomes or the approval of anyone watching. It is yours, entirely, in the way that only things you built yourself can be entirely yours. And here is what that structure produces that most people spend their whole lives looking for in the wrong places. The day stops feeling like something happening to you. It starts feeling like something you are inside of, fully, deliberately, with both hands. Present for the hard parts instead of flinching from them. Grounded during the unstable parts instead of scrambling for something outside yourself to hold on to. Returning cleanly from the broken parts instead of collapsing into a story about what the breaking means. That is what 10 Stoic morning habits before 8 a.m. actually build. Not a perfect morning, not a life without difficulty. A person who meets difficulty differently than they did before. A person who built something real, in the quiet, in the unremarkable, in the mornings when nobody was watching, and who carries it into everything the day delivers. That person is not born. That person is built, one morning at a time, starting with tomorrow's. And what comes in the final part of this video, part 5, is the one thing that determines whether everything you just heard stays as interesting content you consumed once or becomes the actual architecture of who you are 12 months from now. It is not another habit. It is the truth about why habits fail, and the single shift in how you see yourself that makes everything else not just possible, but inevitable. Do not skip it. We have been together for a while now, and I want to acknowledge something before we go any further. Most people who start a video like this, a long one, a demanding one that asks you to sit with uncomfortable truths instead of just handing you a highlight reel of inspiration, most people are gone by now. They dropped off somewhere in the middle, not because the content lost them, because something in the content got too close to something real and the instinct to look away won. You are still here. That is not nothing. Do not treat it like nothing, because what I am about to tell you in this final part, this is the piece that determines everything. Not the habits themselves, not the morning routine, not the Stoic philosophy or the ancient wisdom, or any of the specific practices we have covered. This, what comes next. And it starts with the most honest question this entire video has asked. Why do people fail to change? Not why do they fail to start? Starting is easy. Motivation makes starting easy. The hard morning after a video like this, the journal bought with genuine intention, the alarm set 30 minutes earlier. Starting is not the problem. Why do they fail to continue? The answer that most self-improvement content gives you is discipline. You need more discipline, more consistency, more willpower, more commitment to the process. That answer is not wrong exactly, but it is incomplete in a way that makes it almost useless, because it treats the symptom without touching the cause. Here is the actual cause. People fail to continue because they are trying to perform a new behavior from inside an old identity. Read that again, slowly. Performing a new behavior from inside an old identity. The person who sees themselves at the core, underneath all the intention and the motivation and the genuine desire to change, as someone who is not disciplined, who is not consistent, who has tried this before and it did not stick, that person is fighting against themselves every single morning. They are trying to do the habits of a disciplined person while believing somewhere underneath the surface that they are not a disciplined person. And the belief always wins. Not immediately, not on day one when the motivation is high and the newness is energizing, but by day 12, by day 19, by the first genuinely hard morning, when the only thing standing between the routine and the warm bed is who you actually believe yourself to be. The belief wins. Every time. This is what the Stoics understood, at a level that most modern psychology is only now beginning to articulate with data. Marcus Aurelius did not write Meditations as a self-help book. He wrote it as identity work. He was writing to himself, specifically, deliberately, repeatedly, about who he intended to be. Not what he intended to do, who he intended to be. The doing was downstream of the being, always. And this is the shift that changes everything about whether the 10 habits in this video become the architecture of your actual life or become another thing you tried once and remember fondly. The shift is this. Stop thinking of these habits as things you are adding to your life. Start thinking of them as things that reveal who you already are, at the level that matters. At the level of what you are actually made of, underneath the circumstances and the history and the accumulated evidence of the times you did not follow through. You are not a person who is trying to become disciplined. You are a person whose discipline has not yet been fully uncovered. That distinction sounds subtle. It is not. It is the difference between a person climbing toward something they are not sure they can reach and a person excavating something they know is already there. The excavation is hard. Do not let me make it sound easy. Every morning practice is a dig. Some mornings you hit rock and you make almost no visible progress and you go to bed feeling like nothing was moved. But underneath the rock, underneath the resistance and the missed mornings and the habits that broke and the standards that were not held and the versions of yourself that showed up and fell short, underneath all of it, the thing you are excavating is real. It was always real. It just required the digging to reach it. And here is what the digging produces that nobody who has not done it can fully understand from the outside. On a morning, an ordinary one, not a dramatic one, not a morning that announced itself as significant, you will wake up and the routine will not feel like a decision anymore. It will just be what you do. Not because it became easy, because it became you. The 10 minutes of silence will not be something you are choosing over the phone. It will be something you do the way you brush your teeth, automatically, without negotiation, without requiring a motivational feeling to initiate it. The hard physical thing will not be something you are overcoming resistance to do. It will be something your body moves toward, because the version of you that does not do it has become the stranger. The one standard set and carried through the day will not be an act of discipline. It will be an act of identity. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is the version of myself that exists now, not the one I am working toward, the one that is already here, already operating, already building. That shift from aspiration to identity does not happen on day 1. It does not happen on day 7 or day 14. For most people, it begins to arrive somewhere around day 30. Not dramatically, quietly, in the form of a morning where you notice that the resistance is smaller than it used to be, where you noticed that you reached for the journal before you reached for the phone, not because you were disciplined enough to make the better choice, but because the better choice had become the natural one. And that quiet arrival, that undramatic, unannounced morning where the practice just is, instead of being something you are efforting toward, that morning is worth more than every motivated morning that preceded it. Because motivated mornings are borrowed time. That morning is yours. Now I want to tell you something about the 10 habits specifically, because there is a right way and a wrong way to begin with them, and the wrong way is the most common way. The wrong way is to start all 10 tomorrow. I know that feels counterintuitive after everything we have covered. You are engaged. You are ready. The motivation is real, and it is here right now, and you want to use it while it is available. Use it, but use it correctly. Use it to begin with 3, just 3. The 3 that felt most like something you recognized, not just understood intellectually, but recognized. The 3 that when you heard them produced something in you that was less like learning something new and more like being reminded of something you already knew was true. Those 3. Tomorrow, before 8 a.m. The other 7 are waiting. They are not going anywhere, and they will integrate far more permanently into who you are if they are added to a foundation that is already solid than if they are piled on top of day 1 alongside 9 other new commitments. Build the foundation first. 3 habits, every morning, for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, look at who you are in the morning compared to who you were on the morning before day 1. Not in terms of what you accomplished, in terms of how you feel inside the first hour of the day, in terms of the quality of mind you are carrying into 9 a.m., in terms of the groundedness, that specific, quiet, unmistakable sense of being located inside yourself that you either have or do not have when the first real pressure of the day arrives. If the 30 days produced what they will produce, and they will if the return is made every time the routine breaks, then adding the remaining habits will not feel like adding more to an already full plate. It will feel like completing something that was already underway, and the person you will be at the end of that second 30 days, the person carrying all 10 habits not as a routine they are executing, but as an expression of who they actually are now. That person meets their day differently than the person who watched this video and felt inspired and went to sleep and woke up and checked their phone. Not because the inspired person lacked something, because the person who built the habits across 60 ordinary mornings gained something that inspiration alone cannot give: the unshakable quality. The specific internal steadiness that comes not from circumstances cooperating and not from feeling motivated and not from everything going according to plan, but from knowing, through accumulated personal evidence rather than borrowed belief, that you can handle what arrives, because you have been training for it. Every morning before 8 a.m., in the quiet, in the unremarkable, in the mornings nobody saw and nobody applauded, and the only person the choice mattered to was you. Those mornings are the whole building. Everything that the outside world eventually sees. The patience, the decisiveness, the groundedness under pressure, the quality of someone who has done the internal work. All of it was made in those invisible mornings first. Go build. Not tomorrow in the abstract, tomorrow specifically, the actual tomorrow that follows this actual day, with 3 specific habits chosen before you go to sleep tonight, so that the morning does not require a decision, only an action. The warrior you are capable of becoming is not waiting somewhere in a future version of your life. They are waiting in tomorrow morning's first 5 minutes, before the phone, before the noise, before the world gets its hands on the version of you that belongs, first, completely, without negotiation, to yourself. That is where it starts. That is where it has always started. And now you know exactly what to do with it. If this video built something real in you today, if something in here landed in a place that was not just interesting, but true, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because the number matters, because somewhere in the people you know, there is someone who is standing in the same place you were standing before you pressed play. Someone who needs exactly what you just heard. Send it to them. No explanation needed. Just send it. And if you are ready to keep building, if you want more of this, more of the honest, hard-edged, Stoic content that does not flatter you, but actually changes you, subscribe to Stoic Origin. Every single piece of content on this channel was built for the person who is done feeling inspired and ready to start being forged. That is you. You already proved it by making it here. Now go make it to tomorrow morning.